This video is about deployment dependencies when deploying with Clarive. So the use case for this one is that we want to deploy the client app 1.1.0 to an environment. QA, pre-production, production, whatever environments you have, UAT, whatever environments you might have in your organization. But this client app 1.1.0 has prerequisites. In the same environment, to be able to run it, to test it, it needs specific versions of other applications, other components. It requires the BankingWeb 2.1.0 to be there. It requires the ComplexApp 1.2.0 to be there. If one or both of these are not in the environment yet, we will refuse the deployment of the client app. So going into Clarive, this is my current situation. So I have here my client app and my complex app and my banking app that are currently in the ready for QA state, and I want to deploy the client app 1.1.0 to the in QA state. So by dragging it with the Kanban, it asks me if it has to create a job. Just replying yes and selecting the pipeline I want to use. I will use for every of these deployments the same pipeline. These pipelines are agnostic, so you don't need a pipeline for every application or every environment or every technology or every platform. You just reuse the same one. They are agnostic and they get variable substitution depending on the project, depending on the environment they will be deploying to. When I try to create that job, it just tells me that there is a failure, because it says that the following change sets need to be either added to the job or deployed in the QA before. So I need the BankingWeb 2.1.0 and the complex 1.2.0, as I showed you in the slide before. So I have to resolve this before I can deploy my client app to the QA environment. So 3378 is a change set for the BankingWeb. When I take that change set, the first thing I can do with that one is I can just promote that one. It doesn't have any prerequisites. I just can promote that one to my QA environment. So by creating the job, and now you see that this one didn't have any prerequisites, didn't have any dependencies. So it just starts a job, and I can follow that in my monitor. So going over to my monitor, you see that I have a job running for the BankingWeb. For this version, it's bringing it to the QA environment. So this job won't run that long, so it will be finished by now. It is running the post-processing of my job, and now it has finished. When I look into that, it was in the development environment. Now I can see that it has also been deployed to the QA environment. When I go back to my job that I wanted to create for my client app, and I try to create it again, it will come back again with a failure, but it has now seen that the BankingWeb has been deployed to the QA environment, but it's still complaining about the ComplexApp 1.2.0 that is not there. So I have deployed BankingWeb separately, but what I can also do is include, in fact, that ComplexApp into my same job as I will deploy the client app with. So to do that, I just go here into my projects and look for my ComplexApp, and I have here in the ready for QA status the dependent change set with the 1.2.0 version. Just dragging that into my panel here to create my job, selecting my main complete pipeline, and when I now create a job, it won't complain anymore because I have now the dependencies resolved. So I have now as well the BankingWeb 2.1 that I have deployed, and I have a job running with the ComplexApp 1.2.0 that was needed and the client app that needed both of these versions to be there to be deployed to the QA environment. So this job is now running. It's deploying multiple change sets with a single job. And now when I go here, I am in my post-processing. My job will finish soon. It has finished. When I go to my Kanban and I refresh that view, you will see that in my QA environment, I have now my client app 1.1.0, my BankingWeb 2.1.0, my ComplexApp 1.2.0. So I have resolved these dependencies during my deployment, and that's how we can handle these in Clarive.